Do I have the traits? Do I have the qualities to become a successful leader? I've asked myself this question, and I know you have too. It can develop us, but it can also haunt us. There's so many different ways and we can look at this topic, this question. At the end of the day, we want to be successful leaders. So we've begun to uncover this question on this two-part series. I've invited Sam Salah and Travis Revelle back on the show to co-host this very important series on what an effective, successful leader looks like. Some of the answers might surprise you. Can't wait for you to listen in. I'm Dr. Nate Salah, and this is a call to leadership. Fellas, hello.
How are we doing?
Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the show. Good to see you too.
Good night.
Nice to meet you.
Good night. You guys ever work for someone who was the crappiest manager you could ever imagine?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think probably our listeners said, yeah, same here. It's an interesting conversation. One of the questions we get for the show is around what makes a quality person, quality for a successful organization as a leader. What are some of the traits, the skills? Now, I suspect even between us, we're going to have some debate because someone might think that there are universal traits and qualities that are necessary and they're universal across all leadership. Someone else might say, no, in this position with this company, it's a completely different set of skills that's necessary to achieve success. But before we get there, let's start with this. When you've experienced management, or I say management and leadership and management have a lot of overlap, that has caused you to want to leave your company, just throw it in. I want to start with the kind of traits and skills that are universally crappy for success, right? And then we'll go into some that aren't. And let me preface it with this. When I was young, my first job was at Chuck E. Cheese's. And back then, it was before it was
Showbiz Pizza.
Showbiz Pizza place. Yeah. I was 16 years old. And actually, I applied at White Castle. And because White Castle paid more. And basically, whatever's walking distance, I applied. And I couldn't get the job at White Castle. And I figured out why. Because, well, one reason was paid more, and I want to be completely honest. It was all girls working there at White Castles. And I was like, hey, it's a great way to pick up chicks, right? And this is what we used to call them back in the day. Don't judge.
I've never heard anybody say working at White Castle is a great place to pick up chicks.
Listen, the things Nate would do to pick up chicks back in the day, that's a whole other episode.
Times have changed. So anyhow, I find out I didn't get a job because there was one manager who was a dude. So obviously that's why it was all ladies. So I went over to Showbiz, which was right across the street. And I applied there. I got the job. And I worked for some decent managers. There was a manager who came across and he got hired newly. And it was great. My goal as a new employee was to just knock it out of the park. Wherever I worked, I want to knock it out of the park. They didn't start me at the front. They didn't start me with customers. They started me in the kitchen. Not only in the kitchen, but washing dishes. Right? That was my first spot. And as I was washing dishes, my goal was my dishes are going to be so spotless. Like you're going to be able to see your face in my dishes, right? So management saw my aptitude, my drive, and I got promoted. Then I got promoted to cook pizzas, and I was going to make these pizzas phenomenal. Sometimes I add a little bit of Nate's special sauce in the pizza.
Of course,
just saying.
Cajun Nate's.
And then I got promoted again. So then I got to the front and I did everything that you could do in that. And then I got to the point to where they're like, well, you know what? You'd be a good candidate for management. So I was 17 years old. They're like, you have to be 18 to be a manager. And then the new guy shows up. And he is the kind of manager who could care less about your achievements, care less about you as an individual, only cares about bottom line, the numbers, the customers, and nothing about the employees. Well, it got to the point to where I felt as though I was not only so unappreciated, but that I wasn't going to go anywhere. So one afternoon, I took my apron and my little cap, and I asked him to come to the front with me so that I could throw it in the trash and walk out in the middle of my shift. Now, I don't recommend that for anyone. But that was my first real experience with somebody who I knew could care less about the individual. And I was the kind of person where I wanted to know, hey, do you want me to succeed? And do you have a pathway for me to grow in this organization? And if the answer is no, I'm out.
Right.
How about you?
The worst manager I've ever had. I've had a few, but I would say the qualities that they had were selfish, right? Like, so they were only concerned with their own performance, a la what you did for me today type deal. Didn't respect personal time at all. So it could be midnight on a Saturday and you're getting, emails or text messages or phone calls. I need this report, whatever. And then when the team was successful, that person just took all the credit for themselves. Right. But I do think there's different qualities for different levels of leadership. Right. I think there's some universal truths, a few, but I think that leadership at different levels and different types of organizations need to be different.
Yeah. I think we really know what doesn't make a great manager, right? Based off our experiences, like Travis said, selfishness, entitlement, big one, because I'm a manager, I'm entitled to you being beneath me because the hierarchy, right? One thing as a leader that you want is someone to follow you, not because of your title, but because of how you lead, right? And they fall into that by, not being forced or feel like you telling them they must follow you. It's a inclusiveness in how you lead. This is us. This is affecting all of us as a team, right? This is a team. Like I always say, us, we, my team, taking personal credit for their performance. I'm always first saying my team did X, right? So it's a decision to how are you going to lead? Are you going to lead by title, entitlement, or inclusiveness? And lead by example, right? I think that's a universal trait. I always say that if you are able to execute something very well or a skill and you are the manager, right? The people below you or the employees are going to follow you because you are a master at their craft, right? So I know some would argue that you don't necessarily have to be better than the people who work for you at something, but if you can do their job better than they can, it's very impactful. It's very impactful. Like,
well, I mean, but you're going to get to the point where you're a CEO and there's going to be people who perhaps do some roles.
But a manager and CEO, in my opinion, like the CEO has a much different, a lot of time they're directional. Mm-hmm. Now directional on a much bigger scale, so that how you approach that, the calculation's a lot different, right? But like when you say manager, I'm thinking like you said, are you a manager in a Burger King, right?
Right.
This is how, we're all going to succeed together, right? And how we're going to do that is, Nate, you're going to clean the dishes better than anyone at any other location, right? Our customer service scores are going to be better than any other location. And if we succeed here, we're going to get these accolades. We're going to show corporate how great we are. And then in that, as a team, we're going to all benefit, right? That's a different conversation to have. And that gets inclusiveness in what your goal and vision, right?
Yeah, no, I think the way you describe it, yes, in a Burger King, in a Fortune 500 company, political leadership, there's going to be different ways and different parts of your journey. Like you said, there's some foundational pieces to it, but then there's going to be some pieces that perhaps are essential for different types of roles, right? Let's talk about some of the foundationals. Like, what are non-negotiables in successful leadership?
I think you have to have vision, right? And whether you're leading a team of 5 people or 5,000 people, you have to know where you're leading your people. So I think that's number one. And then I think, right, like there's softer skills. I think that's the most important is having a vision and being able to, bring that vision to life to your team. so they understand where they're going. I always use the analogy, hey, here's where the bus is going. You know what I mean? So here's where we're going on this bus, right? We're all jumping on this bus together. Here's where we're going. Here's why it's important. Here's why it's important to you, right? So here's why it's important to all the stakeholders. But then I think, depending on what type of organization you're in, right? How many people you're leading, it starts to change. If you're the CEO of a large multinational corporation, your skill set is dynamically different than if you're leading a team of 10 to 15 people. If you're leading a team of 10 to 15 people, I think that you need to be empathetic. I think that you need to be able to understand what your team is going through. I think the softer skills are more important, right? When you're leading, let's call it a public company, your loyalty changes from your employees to your shareholders, right? And when you're operating in a stance where you're trying to return, an investment to shareholders, you're not as soft. You know what I mean? Like, it's more task oriented. Like, here's the things that we have to get done. And either you're going to be able to do this or I'm going to find somebody who can, right? And in a smaller organization where you're trying to, focus on the culture and you're starting to focus on, how to get people to operate in their genius zone and operate at their highest level, there's more carrot, less stick. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's talk about vision, because you brought something up that I think a lot of people, even the listener now, might think, I don't know that I've done this effectively, and I've done this in the way that is articulated. And I'm glad you started with that, because vision, I agree. I think that vision, I don't know how you feel about it, Sam, but vision to me is the first step of effective and successful leadership. Always. If you don't know where you're going, nobody's going to know where they're going, and you're like a ship without a rudder. You're never going to get there. It is the foundation of all leadership. But not only having vision, communicating it in a way that's appealing to your followers, or your non-leaders, as we call them, and that the whole idea behind leadership is shared purpose, right? It's like, hey, are we all going someplace that we all want to go?
The first word is important, shared. And that's where leadership misses a lot. The mentality of, not to cut you off, but again, that's the number one, in my opinion, failure in leadership, is the whole me and I approach. Like, I'm the manager, I'm the CEO, I'm the, you're beneath me. So let's, you know what I mean? Let's start there, right?
Because that's not something people share.
And that's not how I lead, and that's not how you lead, and that's not how you lead, right? And then we're successful in leadership because we don't lead that way, right? But I've seen many times where, I'm the entrepreneur, I'm the business owner, I sacrificed, it's me, I. And then you have no value for your employees because everything's about you. It's never about them. So your organization is your organization, not theirs. So why would they care for anything above $1?
Agree.
You haven't offered them anything. That's not shared vision. That's your vision.
You make a good point, because the old way was, hey, this is my deal. And we're talking about small to medium sized business. Let's just frame that. And I agree. Once you get to the larger businesses, yes, you don't know. Even Walt Disney says this, as soon as he started selling equity, when he went public, he knew, this isn't my company anymore. It's my name. It's not my company. I now have other owners, and they could be thousands, millions of other owners who ultimately I have to answer to now. It changes the entire dynamic. However, the vision doesn't change, because even those shareholders have to share in your vision for where this company is going. Otherwise, even they'll leave, right? And I don't want to beat it, but you're listening to the show, and we just cannot underestimate the power and the value and the importance of starting with a compelling vision that is shared. Has to be. If you're not there, like, I wouldn't say stop doing business, but I would say at night when you're done working, you need to get that dialed in.
Yeah, and the easiest way to do this, right? Because I want to give people some actual tangible ways to do this, is to literally just vision cast, which is no differently than just daydreaming, right? About where you want your company to be and start a year from now. What do you want it to look like? What do you want it to feel like? What do you want those profits to be? And then you just start working backwards, right? So, okay, if this is where I want to be 365 days from now, and then you have to take a hard look at where you currently are, identify what that gap is between where you are right now and where you want to be a year from now, and just work a daily plan. I mean, it sounds easy, and maybe it's not as easy as I'm making it sound, but that's really all it is.
That's all it is.
Right?
That's all it is. Start with that year out, then go to 9 months, and then 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, 4 weeks, 1 week, 1 day.
That's it.
Yeah.
Work it backwards.
That's it. And then it's just constantly reevaluating. Where am I? Am I hitting my targets that I need to hit? And maybe you didn't dream big enough, right? I think that's something that we're facing in our company right now, right?
Yeah.
We and I'll give you an actual story about it here in a second, but we didn't dream big enough when we were setting out our yearly goals this past year. Maybe you dreamt too big, and that's okay too, right? But it's readjusting. So some things that we're doing at Unwired, which we're getting into this really heavily, is we're taking it a little bit further and we're saying, okay, where do we want to be 5 years from now? Right? If we really look out, because we're a larger organization, it's harder you can't just move a big organization like us, quickly. So it's okay, where do we want to be 5 years from now? And that's more of a dream, right? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And what I like to do when I'm working with my partners and with other people in the organization is I want to get them it's almost like a manifestation project, right? Yeah. So really visualize, tell me what you feel, tell me what you see, tell me what happens day to day. Like, what does your job look like if we do X? And then you start working back, right? And so the 5-year plan is kind of a wish list of things that you want to do. But we work that plan back all the way to a year. That's what we're doing now. And then we look at it, and the year is really crunch time, right? These are what we actually think is within reach. And where we messed up is in January at our sales conference, we put a number on the board that we really wanted to hit. And the problem is that we then hit that number in May, right? And so congratulations, great job, right? Awesome. We hit our number that we were looking for the year. But that's a glaring problem for the leadership team because we don't know our business well enough to be able to potential
right.
to underestimate where we should be. And so there's a lot of vision casting for the year.
Right.
But I think that, I think it's important that, the one company I worked for that was very numbers focused. If you were off on your forecast, either more than 5% over your forecast or 5% under your forecast, you would think, great, I'm at 120% to my goal. My ass was in trouble.
Really?
Like in trouble. Like I was getting grilled by the CEO on why I didn't know my business, that I couldn't forecast within 5%. Now this was 5% with 200 plus employees, $1 billion P&L. Like this was not 5%. Like I hit, an extra 20 numbers, right? I mean, this was a major thing, but it taught me at a young age that like, you have to know your business good and bad, and you can't set goals that are just layups. Like you've got to stretch people on their goals. They have to be attainable, but you want to say, okay, if everybody's working at 90, because nobody ever works at 100%. So at 95%, what is our organization? What does that output look like? How do I define that? And then that's where you drive people to hit their 95%.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that definitely is. It's funny from my perspective, when you crush that number, I'm excited. And it's funny how you talk about different skill sets and different backgrounds and different perspectives, right? Which is great. And that's why Travis is amazing at what he does, is that he gives me a new perspective. So instead of looking at it like, yeah, I'm excited that we crushed our number, but like we really didn't know our business potential. So it's a learning process, and we're learning fast, right? And entrepreneurs, we get we put blinders on a lot, and sometimes those blinders are not removed until you have other people around you to remove them, right? I've experienced that myself. So I think that the biggest calculation in growth And if you're not a solopreneur, if you're not someone that's like wakes up every day, this is me, this is I, this is my product, it's me, I'm, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm talking about everyone else who's like, who wants to scale and have a
And lead.
and lead.
True leadership, because leadership is leading others, right? If you're a solopreneur and you have your craft and you have your technical skill,
Just
you're
work
not
on that.
leading anyone in a business. It's totally cool, but it's that model is stay small, keep it all.
Yeah. So people is the number one calculation in growth. People. How you get people, how you maintain people, how you find new people. It is the formula, right? And then you talk about vision and leadership, which is, the bones of that. Finding people. Those are the bones. That's the core. And people are everything, and talent's everything. We're just having a conversation about talent, and I'm a guy who gets excited when he sees talent. Like when I see someone who's good, that's available, and I respect. I probably get overly like aggressive in trying to grab them, but my track record shows that if you go back in the history of me grabbing talent, it's always paid off. And the reason is because talented people will get you the results that you need to be successful. Hire up, I always say that, hire better than yourself, hire better than your, if you're a manager, you want to hire people that you feel like can elevate your status within an organization. People are the sauce per se in growth. And only way to get them is have an inclusive vision that they understand, that they're a part of, and they're important enough. And you have to communicate that how important they are in order for this company or your organization to get to this goal.
I like that point, and one of the reasons is when we think about leadership traits or qualities, we're often thinking about, are they, can they have extroversion? Are they sociable? Are they have integrity? Do they have, are they intelligent? But rarely do we think about, well, one important quality of a leader, one essential quality is, how do I attract great people around me? Because that is a necessity for successful leadership, whether you are in any place, any employee, any company, any type of business, any industry.
The law of attraction applies to leadership. So if you're in a circle of leaders who are very good at leading people will come and want to join that circle. I believe that. So if you have a company built up of great leadership, people see that. People see the excitement of the people who work there, and they want to become a part of that organization, right? Which in turn creates that. And, we bleed it at Unwired without getting too deep into Unwired, but that's, it's a large.
There's a piece to that I want to just hit, because we rarely think about the vision of the individual in believing in the leader as a decision-making piece to whether I want to join you on this journey to that future place that you've described.
Right.
Because we have to emulate that. We have to exude that. You have to, again, the law, you have to attract that. And I'm going to take a little tangent, but I think this is important. We were talking a little bit about politics before we went on air. And at the time of this recording, it's pre-election 2024. And we were talking about a little bit of the Republican Party. You've got some front runners. You've got Donald Trump, on some level, DeSantis, and then the who's the up and coming.
How do you pronounce his last name?
I have no idea.
That's a miss. But it's okay. It's a difficult one.
We know who
but I like him. I like it. He's intelligent.
So let's talk about that from a leadership perspective, right? What we are doing is we are assessing their vision and whether or not we are buying into them as an individual. This is a really interesting place, political leadership. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting place because it like smashes so many of the normal dynamics that we see in business. Right. But there's a correlation to success and what we perceive as success. Because when we look at it from an academic perspective, we often say, we don't use the terminology, these are the characteristics that successful leaders have. We say that These are the characteristics that are closely associated with follower perceptions of successful leadership. You see that extra step there? Because we really can't say these are the exact traits and qualities that are always going to lead you to success.
Right.
But we can say followers tend to perceive these qualities as closely associated with leaders who they'd like to follow. So with these three people, all right, we just do them a little as an example. Somebody listening is like, oh, this is going to get juicy, right? whether you agree with their politics or not, that's irrelevant. We're just talking about simply from the perceptions. What do you think the main perception is with the attraction to a Donald Trump as far as a constituency saying he has a vision for where I want to go?
Well, he's speaking to people that I think don't feel like anybody else is speaking to them.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This is important because Bill Clinton, this is out of Bill Clinton's playbook, way back when he was in the debates and when he was running for his first run election. He told the people that he feels their pain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because no one else could feel their pain. They weren't seen, they couldn't be heard.
Well, he was against George Bush Sr. at the time, and he's a very diplomatic person and, very out of touch from a common standpoint.
Right. Yeah, George Bush Sr., former head of the CIA, wasn't going to be the kind of guy who's going to give you a bear hug and tell you,
guy. Right.
tell you it's going to be all right. He was going to check you out and make sure, check all the databases.
Yeah. So I think right, he understood the moment, if that makes sense, right? And I think that that's important for leaders to understand the moment, to get a feel for what your team is needing, right? I mean, because I'm going to be honest with you, right? Like you could throw any one of three of us into any organization, and it doesn't mean just because we've been successful leaders in the past, we're going to be successful in that organization, right? We have to be able to understand what's the pulse of the employees, right? What's the pulse of my customers, right? What's the pulse of the stakeholders in this organization, right? Where is everybody at currently? Do they need a cheerleader, right? Do they need somebody to come in and say, you know what? This place is messed up, but we're going to fix it, right? Or is everything humming along and they just need somebody to come in and just continue to maintain the status quo?
It's really important you say that. I want to hear what you have to say about this, Sam. But to again, this isn't an endorsement on any political candidate, but to say and to demonstrate, I will be your voice. I will communicate what you're thinking, what you're feeling from a broader scale. Like if there's issues in the company and you're afraid to say it because you are afraid for maybe you'll get fired or worse. Mm-hmm. And you say, you know what, we've got problems in our company. I know that's how you feel, right? You become their voice. What happens instantaneously? They're like,
you have credibility. They want to follow you.
Wow.
This guy gets it.
Yeah. I mean, that level is, I think it's essential. And that's empathy. Mm-hmm. That's caring.
Absolutely.
And I think that's appropriate at any level. Mm-hmm. I mean, when Elon Musk says, hey, look, I know we got issues with this Cybertruck. It hasn't, we haven't developed it. But let me tell you, what we're coming out with is going to be better than what we would have come out with. I care about how you feel about this, but here's why this is taking so long.
Yeah.
No, I think that's what we talked about is like empathy. I think politically though, people like echo chambers. So if someone's saying what they feel already, they just I don't believe people sway.
Right. The thing about politics, which cracks me up, which is different, I think, than business, is that I can get up there and all day long, I can tell you everything you want to hear. But nobody likes to say, this is how we're going to do it.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, right? It's just political theater, right? Surely. And so everybody wants those 10-second little, quotes, right? Everything at the way they talk. Soundbite. Here's my soundbite. And when you listen to, in full disclosure, I didn't listen to the whole Republican, thing last night, but I saw snippets of it. But they're all the same, right? People arguing with each other. No, I'm gonna solve, the border crisis. How? Right? Like I wish they would each come and they each get 15 minutes to lay out their plan on a specific topic.
Should be a business approach.
Should be a business approach.
This is how we.
You know what I mean? Right? Like this is
What's your plan?
What's your plan?
Yeah.
and show me everybody's plans and let me pick which plan I think has the highest likelihood of success, right? But you don't get that, right? And so I think as business owners, we don't get the ability to just have sound bites, right? Like we actually have to get stuff done. But I think when you're explaining your vision, what's super important to do is something that Sam said. It's not my vision, it's the vision for the company, and here's where you fit into that vision, and here's why your role is so important. And this is why you need to do X, Y, and Z every single day, right? These mundane tasks that people do every single day, they need to know how that fits into the larger picture of the organization and what kind of impact that's making.
Do you think it's Ramaswamy is his last name?
Nice.
Vivek Ramaswamy. Yes, I had to look it up. Do you think so? This guy is he's a business guy, and he's had to operate in a world where he's had to get results.
Right.
Of course, Donald Trump was a business guy. Some might question the results he's actually gotten. Right. Yeah. Right. If any of his real estate projects were actually profitable,
right,
has yet to be, remain to be seen. Of course, he said he doesn't have to pay taxes anymore because of the losses he's taken, which not necessarily what you want to hear from a business owner, right? Nonetheless, Ramaswamy is a guy who has a great deal of success in business.
Young. $1 billion company.
And I think he's still in his 30s. I want to say he's young. He's young.
He's young.
Or maybe not in his 30s,
that.
but he was in his 30s when he became a billionaire, I believe.
Yeah.
But to your point, right? It's that piece of, do I believe, and we can sidetrack some of the politics stuff. Do I believe this person has what it takes to get me to the finish line? This is the question followers are asking, right? Do you have the qualities necessary to get me there? We know people in our own circles